Deep within the Florida Everglades, among the moss-covered cypress trees and abundant wildlife, lies a city lost to time. While unknown to most individuals, many theories and tales have been told of this lost civilization, promptly named Lost City. How did the city come to fruition? How did it all fall apart and become lost to time? What secrets does this place hold? I'll be discussing all of that in this video. This is the story of the lost city in the Florida Everglades. The beginnings of the lost city are a bit murky, with no one truly knowing how the area first came into existence. By far the most popular and likely explanation lies far back during the American Civil War. Towards the end of the war, it became apparent to the Confederate soldiers that the Union was likely going to win the war. This was an obvious problem for most of the Confederate soldiers, as not only had they been fighting on the other side, but many of them planned to live off their claims from the war. To elaborate, many Confederate soldiers had seized large amounts of gold from the war, whether that be claiming it off of Union soldiers or pillaging it from other places. The hard truth for the Confederates was that most of this gold was likely to get claimed from the Union once the war had ended. To prevent this, they took off to the best area they could think of, the Florida Everglades, by stashing their gold deep in the Everglades, a place riddled with poisonous snakes, crocodiles, bugs, and flooding. It was unlikely that the Union would ever reclaim it. And so the legend of the Lost City was born, a place where Confederate soldiers could go to stash away their valuables. Unfortunately for the Confederate soldiers, their stay was quite short at the Lost City, as they were supposedly killed by Seminole natives shortly after they set up their new home. As time went on, the Lost City supposedly drifted more and more into obscurity. Then in 1920, a new era would change the history of the Lost City. This era is known as the Prohibition era. For those who are unaware, the Prohibition is a period in the United States history that was sparked by the idea that alcohol consumption was destroying American society by corrupting individuals and ruining families. To put it simply, as a result, manufacturing and sale of alcohol was banned all across the country. So you may be wondering, how does this connect to the Lost City? Well, one of the major stakes to fame the settlement has is its connection to the Prohibition. According to legend, in the 1920s, the Lost City was used as an illegal moonshine distillery for none other than the famous American mobster, Al Capone. This theory may seem far-fetched, but it was backed up by a man named Tom Shirley, who was a manager of the Freshwater Fishing Commission of the Florida Everglades in the 1950s, so it is possible. Legend has it that Al Capone set up a distillery far out in the Everglades to help keep his local saloon in business. According to reports, the Lost City continued to be used for alcohol production and transportation well into the 1930s after Al Capone had been arrested. After this, it seems as if the Lost City drifted into obscurity, with the risk of living far out in the Florida Everglades not worth the effort. As time went on, the city eventually became legend, but reports still confirm to us that it does exist. So where is the Lost City located, and what does it look like? According to reports, the city is 3 acres in size, so roughly the size of 1.5 football fields. It lies roughly 8 miles south of Alligator Alley, a segment of Interstate 75 that runs through a deep part of the Everglades. I'm sure you can all assume of how that road got its name. The only problem with this description is the fact that Alligator Alley is roughly 80 miles in length. Going over to a map, I've marked off the possible areas this lost city could be in according to the description we have from the 1950s. Now the city is overgrown by vegetation, making it nearly impossible to spot on a map. According to the few who have set foot on the mysterious city, artifacts ranging from 1,000 to 2,000 years old have been found on the property. These artifacts belong to the native Seminole people. Items such as canoes have been found, as well as ancient ruins where people once lived. This alludes to the idea that the Confederate soldiers may not have been the first people to live on the land. Now it seems that the route to the city has been lost, and it's unlikely that an expedition out there would be possible by river. So what stories and legends does this lost city hold? Well, the most common one I've found is the legend of a cryptid named skunk ape. According to legend, skunk ape is a bipedal humanoid creature. It has reddish-brown hair and weighs roughly 400 pounds. According to those who have supposedly witnessed skunk ape, they say the creature possesses a revolting smell of wet dog mixed with rotting eggs. The first ever report of skunk ape was in 1942 when a man reported seeing the creature around Tallahassee, Florida, after it clung to the man's vehicle for about a mile before disappearing into the forest. Another report came from a man named Richard Smith who felt something slam across the front of his car while driving on US Route 27. Richard slammed on the brakes and initially thought he had run into a man wearing dark clothes, but as the hairy beast began to rise 7 feet into the air and roared, he realized it was a beast of some sort. According to Richard, he took off down the road before the beast could charge his car. Reports continued to flood in the 1970s as the urbanization of the Florida Everglades continued. I'm not going to go into detail about these reports, as they could suffice for an entire video themselves. So if you'd be interested in a video about skunk ape, let me know. The importance of skunk ape in regards to the lost city is the idea that it's supposedly its home. According to many of the forums I've come across about the lost city, the legend of skunk ape is one that is closely associated, with some even claiming that the lost city now serves as a home for a colony of skunk apes. This is likely just campfire stories in terms of validity, but the idea is interesting nonetheless. Others report stories of there being a ghost ship that patrols the waters around the lost city. The crew composed of spirits of lost pirates from the 1700s. Some airplane crews have reported their technology going out over the areas rumored to be the lost city's location, as well as seeing a ghost ship floating around the area. Both of these legends are likely just an attempt to add more mysticism and mystery behind the lost city legend, but I believe it's important to mention. The legend of the lost city is an incredibly mysterious one. It's hard to separate fact from fiction, but the city itself holds so much history that I feel it's worth mentioning. While it's likely that we'll never locate the lost city again, I believe that's not necessarily a bad thing. The strange and fascinating nature of the city is part of the charm, and discovering it today might take away from that feeling. Today, the lost city of the Florida Everglades remains one of the largest unsolved mysteries in the US, and I believe this will continue for many years to come. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing and checking out one of my other videos. I cover all sorts of unsolved mysteries and true crime cases. Have a great day. Goodbye.